everybody live or at least in one take? Live from the Michigan Realtor Brokers Summit, it is the Government Affairs Videocast. My name is Brad Ward.
And I am Brian Western.
And it is the spring edition. Baseball season is in full swing. The Tigers are off to a good start. And hopefully you are all better closers than the current bullpen.
It's an upgrade.
We have the legislature back right now from spring break. They are knee-deep in the Michigan budget. The governor had released his budget kind of targets. The legislature has gone about and set their targets. They are a few $100 million apart. The House and Senate both looking to spend a little bit less this year than the governor wants to spend. And there's some theories about what they're holding on to that extra money for. We have a lot of debt in this state, debt that can be paid down in terms of pensions and liabilities into the future. We also have the possibility of some sort of tax cut or tax refund going back to the people of this state. And then the third option is putting some money into that rainy day fund. As we know, coming out of that dark decade that we had here as a state, a rainy day fund is an important thing to have when you are a state and trying to meet those budget demands. But we have some issues moving along right now, and one of which that we've talked about on this videocast before has been protection of vacation rentals. Brian?
That's right. We have discussed the vacation rental issue on this videocast in the past. For those of you who have not been privy to this information, there has been a trend around the state whereby local governments have been using zoning law to essentially ban the practice of vacation rental properties. That in and of itself to us is a violation of a fundamental property right. These things have been occurring for years, generations in those communities, and legislation is being introduced, if not today, next week, to amend the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act to clarify that it is not commercial activity in a residential zone if you are renting a property periodically for less than 28 days. Obviously, that still leaves the door open for a local government to regulate the practice, to require registration. That is the practice. So at this point in time, we are not promoting a model ordinance, but I will tell you that the Issues Mobilization Fund is currently being accessed.
No. Heck, we're not even telling them that they have to regulate.
Yes, we're not. But the Issues Mobilization Fund has recently been accessed by our friends down in Southwest Michigan to, in fact, create what would be a model ordinance. So the goal here would be able to amend the Zoning Enabling Act and then also have a suggested best practice if you do choose to regulate. So that's something that we're working on concurrently right now in the legislature in both the House and the Senate.
Live television, everyone. Live television. Also going on this week, just yesterday, we testified in the House Tax Policy Committee on a package of bills known as MI Thrive, or Michigan Thrive. What these bills do, and these were bills that we supported last session, at the end of last session, but these target some of those really difficult, hard to develop brownfield sites that I'm sure many of you can think of in your kind of urban communities where you had something like, let's say, the Pontiac Silverdome just down the road, that is no longer no longer in use, but the market in terms of what a developer would be able to go in there and build and sell, there is a financing gap between what the market will bear and the cost of actually going in, cleaning up the site, and trying to build multiple story construction, particularly in an urban setting. There's additional costs and financing issues that come into play when you try to do a mixed use development like this. So what these bills do is they target some of these, and you will be able to do a handful of them each year throughout the state, and depending on the size of your community, the project the developer would be in for would range anywhere between $115 million to $500 million for a largest city like Detroit. But what it would be is it would be a tax capture once the project is completed and operational, that the developer would be able to capture a portion of both the income tax from the residents that live in the project and a portion of the sales tax that would be generated from the project in order to kind of use that to bridge the financing gap between the market and what the actual cost of the development is. You know, it doesn't pick winners and losers between industry. It requires local government approval before it gets approval by the state level. But these are things that are truly transformational, that really have the ability to transform a community, that really have the ability to preserve our downtown. And I don't have to tell you all of this, but for a lot of seniors and millennials, you know, urban living, walkable distances to things like restaurants and shops and entertainment are very desirable in terms of the housing that they're looking for. And this would be able to prop those projects up. It's always cheaper to go out and build in a township somewhere, but really preserve our urban core cities here in the state of Michigan. So those bills have had 2 hearings in the House, and hopefully a vote next week to get those moving. They passed the Senate with overwhelming bipartisan majority, and so hopefully they get brought up here in the House. You know, they're predicting that there is a significant amount of money that's ready to be invested in communities that can latch onto this and get a shovel in the ground right after these pass. So.
And one of the last pieces of legislation we wanted to update you on. How many people in the room have invested in an education savings plan? Yeah. People are familiar with the concept. So one of the key initiatives this session is the development of a first-time home buyer savings account. And the goal here is to model that type of account after the education savings plan, whereby you would be able to invest up to a certain amount every year, and you would be able to deduct that amount on your state income taxes. That's similar to the way that education savings plan works, and that's also very much an incentive to use that investment model. On the other side, any gain from that account would also be tax-free. So the model that is being developed right now in the Senate, Senator Pete McGregor is going to be sponsoring it, would feature those 2 characteristics. It would also have requirements that obviously it's used in Michigan, it's used for principal residents, and obviously that achieves 2 things. Not only does it help, you know, at a very early age start the smart savings process for your first home, but it also focuses on retaining talent in Michigan, and it also focuses on home buyership in Michigan. And the one area that we're really trying to hammer home with lawmakers when we talk about this plan is that when you do start early and when you do start investing in this, whether it's a 15-year process or a 10-year process, you can alleviate a lot of those concerns that every student is dealing with right now coming out of college, massive student loan debt. And then obviously we know the financing issues that everybody's facing out there in the marketplace with getting that down payment assistance and addressing the 20% to avoid PMI, things of that nature. So those are the type of practical points that seem to be really resonating with lawmakers as we talk about this as we meet. And you know, we have been out in front on this issue, making sure that it's a concept that's really clear and understandable. And as we tie this up with the bullpen, by getting out in front of this, we won't have to lose the lead in the late innings.
So with that, don't groan. So with that, that wraps up the spring edition here of the Videocast. Remember to swing for the fences. I'm Brad Ward.
And I'm Brandon Westrom.
Thank you.